G'day guys, this video is a first for white tea watchers because in this video, we're giving away a watch. And I'm really excited to say this giveaway has been made possible by the lovely people at a.b.art who reached out and offered to send me this Freiburg 265 jump date for the channel. And to celebrate what is a pretty cool milestone for me, instead of keeping the watch, I'd love to give it away to one of you. Because let's be real, nobody would be giving me anything if it weren't for you guys actually watching. I have to do the YouTube thing though, and I'll explain exactly what you need to do to receive this later in the video. But as you might know, this isn't really a watch review channel. I much prefer to use watches to explore the bigger ideas and stories behind watchmaking. So, rather than simply reviewing it, I thought I'd let this watch inspire today's video. And the standout feature on the 265 is the jumping date, which naturally made me want to explore date complications. For me, it's always been kind of a non-negotiable on any of my watches except specifically on dress watches. There are probably days where I use the date more than I use the time, given how easy it is to find the time in public. And yet, for something so simple, watchmakers have come up with an incredible number of different ways to display it. So today, let's take a look at how many ways watchmakers have made to show us what is essentially the exact same number. Let's start simple with the version almost everyone knows, the humble date window. Usually sitting at 3 o'clock, although watchmakers have squeezed it into just about every position imaginable. Underneath the dial is a numbered disc, normally carrying the dates from 1 to 31. Once every 24 hours, the movement advances that disc by one position, bringing the next number into view. Simple, reliable, and most importantly, easy to understand. You glance at the watch, find the little window, and there's today's date. Of course, the mechanism doesn't actually know how long the current month is. After any month with fewer than 31 days, you'll need to correct it manually, but mechanically, this is the basic date complication most of us will be familiar with. The 3 o'clock position became popular for its ability to peek out from a shirt cuff when a watch is worn on the left. Rolex then made it even more prominent with the Cyclops, enlarging the date through a small lens attached to the crystal. For such a practical feature, the Cyclops is surprisingly controversial, almost as controversial as the date window placement itself. Move it down to 4:30 and half the internet, myself included, will immediately become enraged. Some brands try to disguise it by matching the date wheel to the dial, others frame it, enlarge it, or integrate it into an hour marker, but they're all working with essentially the same solution. Cut a window and show the date from underneath. It works brilliantly, it just isn't always beautiful, and that tension between usefulness and design is exactly why watchmakers began looking for other ways to display the date. The first major alternative is the pointer date. Instead of hiding the date beneath the dial, all 31 days are printed around its edge, with a separate hand pointing to the current one. It keeps the dial symmetrical and makes the date feel like part of the watch rather than something viewed through a hole. The most obvious example is the Oris Big Crown Pointer date, where the red-tipped hand has become one of the brand's signatures. It's attractive, mechanically straightforward, and full of character. The downside is that it isn't always especially quick to read, particularly once that pointer starts competing with the hour, minute, and seconds hands. Moving on, we have the big date. This normally uses two separate display elements, one for the tens and another for the units. Splitting the number allows the date to be shown far larger than it could on any conventional date wheel. A great example is the Mido Multifort TV Big Date, which places an oversized date display prominently at 12 o'clock. Like the Oris, it names the watch after the complication itself, just showing how important date complications are. Big dates are clearer and more dramatic, but that added visibility requires more space, more components, and considerably more engineering than showing the same number through one tiny window. But then again, sometimes the date alone just isn't enough. A day date adds the day of the week, normally through a second window or display. The most famous example is, unsurprisingly, the Rolex day date. A watch so iconic, its nickname is the President. It places the numerical date at 3 o'clock and spells out the day in full across the top of the dial. It gives you genuinely useful additional information, although for the precious metal day dates at least, it adds quite a few figures to the price tag as well. If you want to take the day date concept even further, you arrive at the complete or triple calendar. These display the day, date, and month. The date is often shown with a pointer hand, while the day and month sit in small windows near the top of the dial. Popular examples include the JLC Master Control Calendar and the wonderfully busy Lange Söhne Master Collection Chronograph Moon Phase. They look extremely classical and tell you everything you could possibly need to know from a single watch. But despite all that information, a basic complete calendar still has no idea whether the current month contains 30 or 31 days. To solve that problem, they created the annual calendar. An annual calendar understands the different months. Provided the watch keeps running, February will remain as this watch's greatest nemesis, being the only time each year it requires manual correction. Patek Philippe introduced the first annual calendar wristwatch in 1996, and the complication remains strongly associated with the brand. But what about February, I hear you ask? When you're spending that kind of money, surely the expectation of taking your watch off once a year is something for the paws. So to combat that, the boffins within high horology created the perpetual calendar. Except, in a completely backwards bit of wristwatch history, the perpetual calendar actually came first. Patek Philippe created the first perpetual calendar wristwatch in 1925, proving that even high horology isn't immune to shrinkflation. The perpetual calendar not only understands 30-day months but tackles February and even the leap year cycle. As long as it remains running, a modern perpetual calendar can theoretically display the correct date until the year 2100, because the Gregorian calendar skips what would otherwise be a leap year. Patek, again, is one of the names most strongly associated with the complication, although you'll find famous examples from Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, IWC, and G-Shock. It is an extraordinary amount of engineering dedicated to avoiding a few seconds of crown adjustment every year, which is exactly why we love it. By this point, we've gone from simply displaying the date to teaching a watch the rules of the calendar. But complexity isn't the only way to make a date interesting. Some watchmakers decided to rethink the actions of the display instead. Take the retrograde date. Instead of a hand making a full lap of the dial every month, it advances across an arc from 1 to 31. Then at the end of the month, it snaps instantly back to the beginning. Vacheron loves these, as demonstrated here in a blink and you miss it moment. Break it down and a retrograde date tells you exactly the same thing as a normal date window. It just does it with a bit more theatre and a lot more expense, but such is the life of a Vacheron customer. Not to be forgotten are peripheral date displays. Here the date scale itself is arranged around the outer edge of the dial. There are several ways of indicating it, but one of the most spectacular examples comes from a Lange Söhne, and conveniently it happens to be my actual Grail watch. The Zeitwerk date. Here, the numbers 1 to 31 are printed around a glass ring circling the dial. Beneath it, a red segment advances by one position exactly at midnight, causing the current date to appear in red. It allows Lange to add the date without interfering with that incredible jumping digital time display at the center of the watch. And that idea, keeping the dial clean while making the date part of the design, feels very German. Which conveniently brings us back to the watch that inspired this whole video. Now, before anyone gets carried away, I'm obviously not comparing a.b.art's 265 to a roughly $250,000 Lange, but there is a similar bit of design thinking going on here. Instead of simply cutting a date window into the dial, the date has been incorporated into the visual structure of the watch. Here, the dates form a complete ring within the dial, with a small red indicator jumping anti-clockwise from one day to the next. And the philosophy behind this is actually quite interesting. A traditional date window gives you one isolated number. The 265 instead shows where today sits within the entire month. So you're not just reading the date, you're getting a visual sense for where you sit in time. Or, if you're paid monthly, how painfully far away you are from your next payday. I find that idea interesting, but more importantly, it feels suited to this watch's Bauhaus-inspired design. A conventional date window would interrupt the clean and consistent geometry of the dial. Here, the entire month is intentionally worked into the layout, with the small red dot adding function without feeling like an afterthought. And one of you will get to experience this on your wrist for yourself because this is the watch that's being given away. To enter, simply make sure you're subscribed to White Tea Watches and leave a comment below telling me what you think is the most interesting watch ever made with a date complication. There's no right answer. Write an essay, give me one sentence, or just name the watch. Go nuts! Or don't. Either way is fine. 4 weeks after this video goes live, I'll select a winner from the comments, get in touch, and send them this genuinely very cool 265 jump date. I'll put the exact details in the description, but before I give it away, let's take a closer look at it. As we said, the watch comes from the brand a.b.art, a brand that I'll admit was new to me until they actually reached out. But after doing a little digging, I discovered they're not just some pop-up in response to the recent wave of watch collecting. They've been operating for decades. Founded in Freiburg, Germany in 1991, the brand as a whole draws on both Bauhaus and Ulm school design principles, ensuring clarity, order, proportion, and function all work together. Which makes sense because that sounds extremely German. In 2003, they moved to Switzerland, so although the watch has German design roots, it now combines those with a Swiss home. Here on the 265, we have a 41mm case made from 316L stainless steel and powered by a Ronda 715 Swiss parts quartz movement. Apart from the reliability and accuracy of quartz, the real benefit here is it keeps the watch to an insanely thin 6mm. So thin your shirt cuff may not even be aware of its existence. There's also a genuine sapphire crystal, which continues my beef with Seiko because I honestly don't know how they get away with using hardlex on watches that can cost up to 5 times this. It comes on a stainless steel quick release Milanese mesh bracelet, which suits the clean industrial design and helps the watch sit even flatter against the wrist. However, if mesh isn't your thing, the 20mm wide lugs will happily accommodate you. A simple black leather strap, which is actually shown in some of the promo images here, would actually be my choice because that makes the whole thing look super slick. Water resistance is only 30 meters, so this is definitely more design oriented than rugged Explorer, but for the bargain price of 214 Aussie dollars at the time of writing, the specs are pretty hard to complain about. Overall, it's easy to wear, thoughtfully designed, and a very approachable entry point into that German design philosophy, giving you a chance to try it out, perhaps dip your toe in, before diving headfirst into the much deeper and frankly, much more expensive end of the pool. If you are a mechanical purist, they also offer it in a Miyota-powered version coming soon for $315 at the time of writing, although you do lose this extreme thinness, which I think actually really lends itself to this particular design. But really the point of difference here comes down to the date, and further proves that even after centuries of watchmaking, there are still new and interesting ways to show us that same number. And in 4 weeks, one of you will get to find out just what it's like to live with full time. Good luck. Make sure you subscribe and get your comment in below. A like won't help your chances, but it won't hurt them either. But until then, I've been Johannes. This is White Tea Watches, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next one. Cheers.